What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing back at you again. Today's topic is Ben Askren too dismissive of Jake Paul's skills, or is he right that Jake Paul has fought no one? Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life you for riches, huh? That life you for riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fan, let's talk some more boxing today. All right, we're going to talk about the Jake Paul Ben Askren fight that's coming up on April 17th. They've been all over social media. I saw the press conference. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was pretty interesting. In the press conference, Jake Paul was trying to make jokes and crack jokes about what, Ben Askren was saying. But if you were to judge the press conference, as to who won and who lost, I guess you'd have to say that Jake Paul lost that press conference. None of his jokes really were funny. He seemed kind of silly in the press conference. And Jake Paul, I mean, didn't really seem, he seemed, I don't know what to say. I mean, he didn't seem his usual, confident self. I would think that, the way Ben Askren handled the press conference, the pre-fight press conference was much better than how Jake Paul handled it. And Ben Askren seemed calm, cool, and composed, while Jake Paul was, seemed like he was trying too hard to be funny, and he wasn't. So it was an interesting press conference, if you was to analyze it. You know, Jake Paul seemed, a little nervous, maybe, a little, just kind of jumping from this topic to that topic, trying to be funny, but wasn't really funny. And Ben Askren was just basically dismissive of Paul. He gave Paul no respect whatsoever. Called him Logan's Paul little brother. A lot of points that Ben Askren made seemed to hit, Jake Paul right in the gut. Especially the part about him being Logan Paul's little brother. That seemed to bother Jake Paul a lot. So yeah, you'd have to say that Ben Askren won that press conference if you were to judge it. If you were judging it in terms of winning and losing. And he seemed a more calm, more professional, person in there. Now, I mean, is all that going to translate into him winning the fight? We don't know. But, my question is Ben Askren being too dismissive of Jake Paul? I mean, basically his line or his narrative is that, Jake Paul hasn't really fought nobody. It's good to look good in there against guys that never fought in their life, like Nate Robinson, the other guy he fought prior to that fight. He had 2 fights so far, and he won both of them. He knocked out Nate Robinson, but Nate Robinson was a boxer or fighter of any kind. He was a basketball player. So I mean, to Ben Askren's point, it's not much to be able to knock out a basketball player. I mean, it's all good, but can you do that against a real fighter? I mean, we hear a lot of talk about the skills of Jake Paul, and I saw him training, and he looked like he has some skills. I mean, he looks the part, okay? And when you factor in the fact that he hasn't been boxing very long, and he's not really a professional, he didn't go through any amateur boxing, to so to speak, or anything like that. So, for just a guy on YouTube who decided he wants to take up boxing, he looks pretty good. You know what I mean? And he looks like he's training hard. But then again, to Ben Askren's point, fighting against guys, in the ring who don't really know what to do in there, who can't really put any pressure on you, a basketball player. You know, knocking out a basketball player is a whole different ball game than knocking out a real fighter. And you know, Ben Askren, you know, even though he lost his last fight in the UFC to Masvidal in spectacular fashion, where he got the record for being knocked out. You know, prior to that, you know, he had a pretty good record in the UFC. I mean, a winning record at that. And so, you know, he had fought a lot of tough guys. So, you know, he's not exactly a striker. He's more of a wrestler type of guy. And he basically just took guys down and submitted them. But still, I mean, and we know he can't do that in the ring, but, you know, he is a fighter. And so this is really the first fighter that Jake Paul is going to really face, even though this fighter is not necessarily a striker. His striking game doesn't look very good. But at the end of the day, he's still a fighter, okay, who has had a lot of championship fights, who, you know, was a wrestler, you know, championship wrestler, championship UFC fighter, you know, who have fought tough guys, you know, championship caliber guys. So, I mean, you know, Ben Askren is no joke when it comes to, you know, UFC or wrestling or, you know, but again, you know, can he translate that into boxing? And can he, you know, beat a guy who a lot of people consider to be a pretty good boxer? Okay, I mean, we have had this thing, you know, with MMA fighters, boxers, you know, if they can really, a lot of them can really box like real boxers. And we know they can't really box like real boxers. I mean, you know, they don't really punch the same way as a real boxer. And for the most part, you got good strikers in MMA, but they probably wouldn't last very long in a real boxing ring against a professional boxer. But as Ben Askren keeps saying, Jake Paul is not a professional boxer, so he has no problem fighting Jake Paul, he says, because he said he wouldn't try this against a real boxer, but Jake Paul is not a real boxer. And so, I mean, he has a point. You know, Jake Paul is not a real boxer. He's a YouTube boxer. And so, you know, we're going to see if this YouTube boxer who has just taken up boxing and seems like he's serious about his boxing, okay, from what I'm seeing him, you know, how he's training, it seems like he's very serious about it. And we're going to see if he can actually win a fight against a real fighter. And this should be an interesting fight. So I'm definitely looking forward to the fight. I'm going to watch it. You know, YouTuber versus fighter, MMA fighter. So, you know, this should be a very interesting fight. Now, I must say that Ben Askren has no respect whatsoever for Jake Paul. I mean, it's the only thing he's not doing is yelling it out loud every time he sees Jake Paul. I hear about Jake Paul. But other than that, his whole body language, his whole attitude, his whole demeanor is that of total lack of respect for Jake Paul. No respect at all. Okay. Now, I mean, you know, we got to wonder sometime if that's, I mean, I understand his position, okay, and, you know, he shows, like, you know, supreme confidence in himself that he can beat a guy like Jake Paul who hasn't fought anybody. And so, I'm, you know, I'm feeling it, but again, is he being too dismissive? Is he being too overconfident? You know what I mean? Can Jake Paul actually beat him in this fight? Can Jake Paul pull it out and win against Ben Askren in this fight? I mean, you know, some people would say no, and some people would say yes, but, you know, that's why we're going to be, you know, tuning in for this fight, because, you know, it's going to be an interesting situation to see who actually wins this fight. You know, I guess he should answer a lot of questions about boxing and about MMA, you know, in that way. I mean, yeah, it should be a very interesting fight. We don't know how competitive it's going to be, you know, but I'm pretty sure how long it's going to last. But if it goes the distance or if it doesn't, but we don't know. But it should be interesting. According to Ben Askren, he's going to knock Paul out around the 7th round. You know, so and according to Paul, he's going to try and knock Askren out in the 1st round if he can, like Masvidal did. You know what I mean? So he's been, you know, trolling about that, and, you know, bringing up Masvidal and Askren, and how that fight went, and but yeah, this is gonna be an interesting fight. I'm definitely looking forward to it. As for who's gonna win, I mean, at the end of the day, Askren being a fighter and all, you gotta give him the edge in that fight because he's an actual fighter who have fought many top fighters in MMA, even though they weren't boxers. But a lot of these guys can strike, but not as good as boxers, but still they can strike. And he was able to defeat a lot of these guys. So, I'm looking at Paul and I'm thinking, well, if he can defeat all these guys, in MMA, some of them who were pretty good strikers, why wouldn't he be able to beat Paul? But then again, they're gonna be boxing, not wrestling. So he beat those guys at the wrestling or at MMA type, taking people down. Okay, he's not gonna be able to take Paul down, and that's gonna be a big disadvantage for Askren. So it's kind of, this fight should be a 50-50 fight really. If but with a slight edge to Askren because he's an actual fighter, okay, and Paul is not, and so this is a good test for Paul to see where he really is, and I'm interested to see how it's going to play out, But again, Paul, looks like the goods on, he looks like he can pass the eye test, but I think this Jake, this Ben Askren is going to be a real test for him, and we should see how he reacts to this test. And if he passes and he wins this fight, then we have to give him his props and say that yeah, he's really in there trying to be a real boxer. But again, to be a real boxer, you have to fight boxers, other boxers. You know what I mean? So again, even if he was to win this fight with Jake Paul is not a boxer. But he's a fighter, and we're still gonna have to give Paul some credit for winning this fight if he does win this fight. Again, I would think the edge is with Ben Askren in this fight, as he's a professional fighter and has been fighting for years and was very good at it. So we have to give him the edge in this fight. But I think the fight is basically a 50-50 fight with a little edge, with a slight edge to Ben Askren because of his professional experience. So, I don't know how this fight is going to play out, who's going to win, but it's definitely going to be interesting, and a lot of people are looking forward to it, and so am I. So we'll see what happens, good luck to both guys. May the best man win. I'm definitely looking forward to this fight, and yeah, definitely. So anyway, make sure you like and subscribe to my videos, okay? Share them. That's all I have for right now. This is TBE Boxing. I'm out.